It's the 6th of September. Hello everybody and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily for today. The footage in the background comes from Obski, so thank you very much to them. This is a 51-minute long video. It's a lot of stuff of the Blaze Ridge Steppes, which is pretty cool. I am loving these new maps so much. I've kind of got to that point now where, because I've done all of the older stuff in the betas, now I can really take my time on a lot of the new maps, and they're just so good. My favourite one recently, I guess, would have to be Frostgorge Sound, because when I finally went up there and found all those references to Guild Wars 1, like Yak's Bend going up there, all the way up there, and then Croc's Hollow as well, it's just fantastic. One of my favourite things in game right now is looking at the maps and seeing how they compare to one another, and Blaze Ridge Steppes is probably one of the best maps for that. It is really fantastic to be able to see the crystal and stuff, and in fact I have a question about that later, so we'll get into that in a bit. But thank you very much to Obski for that, and you can find a link in the description down below. For news, the big one to me really is that the actual official forums for Guild Wars 2 is now live. They're in kind of a simple phase though, I believe they've described it, so maybe they're not fully how they will be eventually, but they are at last live, I guess, now that the game is running so smoothly and everything's running just fine. Things have really smoothed out and they can actually get the forums up, so you can go there. They have a fair few different areas you can go to, at least for now. You can advertise your guilds. They've got a nice section, I actually think that's probably one of the most helpful there, which is players helping players, which is a nice general discussion area. It seems to be really the only one that they've got available right now, but lots of support stuff, as we know. That's been up for a while, but the forums are now available, which is very cool. They had a couple of other small things added to their game update section where they talk about the things that they're working on. One interesting one to me, well, first of all, actually one that I think everyone will be happy to hear, is they're looking to fixing the camera, which is cool, because in the betas I felt like there weren't any issues with the camera. I didn't really have any issues, but I've kind of gotten used to the issues of Guild Wars 2's camera now, because they've just been so bad and so in your face constantly. You just kind of learn to work with them. For example, in a lot of jumping puzzles, a real problem that's been happening is the camera can get stuck in a single location and it will stop following your character, so you'll have this really weird out-of-body experience where the camera is stuck in a wall or something, and then you're running around and your character's like going off frame. It's very, very odd, and in jumping puzzles, where obviously you need to be able to see where you're jumping to, it's very frustrating and irritating. Another problem with the cameras that had been happening for a while was it wouldn't account when you went into the down state for what race you were playing as, and I'm not sure whether it's the bigger races or the smaller ones, because I know that it's happened to a lot of humans very often, but if you would go down, depending on maybe your armor set or how big your character was, the camera would actually get stuck inside your like body, but not in a good way, not like you're watching the battle from the ground and you're looking up like first person. It's just in a terrible way where you can't actually see anything that's going on, especially if there's tons of skill effects going on all over the place. So that's been a big problem in combat as well as a lot of minor little things. The camera just loves to get stuck and zoom in whenever you're near any kind of obstacle that's behind you instead of just staying at range. So anyway, they're working on that with the camera, but the other big one that's most interesting to me is that rewards for escorting Dolyaks in World vs. World have now been disabled. Why have they been disabled? Because people were botting them, which is a very depressing thought, but I suppose out of everything in Guild Wars 2, that's one of the most regular things you can do. Events are supposed to be irregular, of course, but the Dolyaks can quite predictably be seen going from the supply camps to certain keeps, and I guess people just started botting them. Maybe that's through escorting them, or maybe that was through taking out other people's supply caravans. I'm not 100% sure, but it does seem to have been a problem. It does seem to have got quite widespread. I was hoping that Guild Wars 2 wouldn't have much of a botting problem, because the idea was, I believe, that a lot of it would be tied to karma rather than gold, and there was no point in botting for that, because you would never be able to sell karma to other players, so that whole idea of selling money and stuff would be less strong or less lucrative for Guild Wars 2, but that doesn't seem to have happened. People have come out in full force. It's just a bit ridiculous. I wonder how many people really do bot, or how often it's just one individual that's decided he's going to bot and he just buys a ton of accounts and then has them all botting away. Really, if ArenaNet can be a bit quicker at catching these people instead of having to take down sections of the game, as it were. I mean, it's not really a whole section of the game that's been taken down. The Dolyaks are still going, and they do still have a role to play in World vs. World, and you will still want to be escorting them, and you'll want to be taking out enemy ones because the supply is still going around, but there's just no reward for the events. But I would like it that ArenaNet support, if they could be a bit quicker at banning the people that are actually doing this. They have no problem with doing that. Actually, it would benefit them quite a lot. If you do have these people buying tons of accounts just so that they can bot, and ArenaNet are quick enough at banning them, they're going to stop sooner or later. later, because Guild Wars 2 isn't a sub-fee MMO. It's costing them a pretty hefty amount of money up front, and I just wonder how many people are buying gold as well. That's the other thing. These people have to be earning a certain amount of money for the botting to be viable, which means that there has to be a certain amount of people actually going to these third parties buying gold. And then the question is, why are there so many people doing that for those kinds of prices when they could do it in-game legitimately straight out of the gem store? I mean, what is it that these other third-party places are offering that people are going to? Is it just people speculatively botting away, trying to earn this money for real money trading straight away, and they don't actually realise it's not going to earn them much money in the long term? Or has it already been proved to be viable and we're going to have them all over the place? Oh, obviously, I'm being a little bit limited in my view here. People could be botting not because of real money trading. They could just be botting for their own personal characters because they rather the rewards of the game than playing the game. But then, you know, I feel like that kind of thing starts far later in a game's lifespan. People aren't that finished with Guild Wars 2 at this point. I've been playing it a whole ton and I've still got loads left to do, so I fail to believe that there are really people out there who are just exhausted by the content that have to bot so that they can get the rewards. I fail to see that anyone's actually come to that after just a week or so with the game being live. It can't be that, surely. And if it is, it's a real minority of people. And those guys as well are even less incentivized to bot because they know just as well as ArenaNet that they spent this money and they're not paying a sub fee, and if they get banned they do lose everything. And with all this talk as well recently of ArenaNet being able to see all the chat logs and stuff like this, I would expect there to be a bit of fear there. But hey, I don't know. It's not really that widespread, don't get me wrong. It just certainly was in Worldverse as well. They've removed these rewards. Hopefully people will stop botting. I also heard that there were a fair few bots in the Harathi hinterlands as well, because there are certainly events there that do cycle very quickly and do give you a ton of centaurs to kill and an awful lot of experience. Maybe it will slow down when people get to 80 and they realise that's not the be-all and end-all of the game, but with experience also being tied to legendary weapons, who knows? Anyway, that's kind of my little spiel on the botting going on at the moment. But it's interesting anyway, because bots in Guild Wars 1, they were there, but because the game was so heavily instanced, you didn't see them that much. So it's funny to me, as such a heavy Guild Wars 1 player, to come to Guild Wars 2, a fully persistent game, and to see the problems that they have. I'm quite curious how it compares to other MMOs around their launches, recent MMOs anyway, around their launches, because a long time ago when an MMO launched, there probably wasn't this massive botting scene flooding to it straight away. In any case, let's go on to the questions for today. Really, as you can see, there's not that much news going on. I will keep you guys up to date. I'm really curious about this live action thing. What's going on here now? We had the eye come out, we had that stuff, but nothing's going on. Did ArenaNet get caught up with their original schedule? Is it not ready? I mean, when are we expecting this to happen? Anyway, I've got a question from Chessrook44 who says, I've been seeing a lot of references to Guild Wars 1 in the game, ranging from the obvious like the Ventari tablet to the well-known like King Jarlath's Refuge, to the more obscure like the graves of Nicholas the Traveller and Professor Yackington. I've also noticed that some of these references are actually part of heart quests. For example, one quest mentions a name and 3 options. You have to pick the right option. For those who played Guild Wars 1, they might know the reference, but for people who haven't, they would have to fire a shot in the dark and hope it's right. Do you think this might take away from people who haven't played Guild Wars 1 as much as it makes me squee in nostalgic glee for having it played myself? If you're suggesting that they should remove these references because there are new players that won't get them, I say definitely not, because I don't think it takes away from their experience. There are actually a lot of things in Guild Wars 2 that are just potluck, and they are just plain. Look at a lot of the stuff in the early Asura areas, right out of the gate, where you're trying to fix those golems. That's potluck. That is potluck. You're just picking certain options. I found a really cool thing in the Iron Marches in a cave where there was a single char there. He had no icon above his head. He was nothing to do with any kind of heart quest or anything. He was just an NPC that I spoke to, because I speak to a lot of the NPCs, and next to him was a broken down char machine, and he said to me, I bet you can't fix this thing. If you can, come speak to me. So you go over to the machine, and then it's the same kind of thing as what was going on with the golems in the early Asura areas. You have a lot of options and it's potluck. You've just got to get through them, see which ones you think are right, and once you'd actually repaired it, you could go and speak to the guy and he would make you an honorary member of his warband and give you some town clothing. Really interesting little thing there. That's just kind of a widespread type of gameplay really they've introduced to Guild Wars 2. And yes, I know the specific heart quest you're speaking about in the Brisbane Wildlands where you do have this, and these do tend to be collectors from Guild Wars 1, but also they were very obscure characters from Guild Wars 1, and I personally, I didn't know who a lot of these people were. Old collectors that would just offer you random small bits of armor that a lot of people towards the end of the game's lifespan completely and utterly ignored, and those are the references. That's quite hard. I feel like really you're going to get a very similar experience as a Guild Wars 1 player in Guild Wars 2 as a Guild Wars 2 player who's new to the franchise. Really, I would hazard a guess that most Guild Wars 1 players in fact don't actually realise that those references are there in the first place, because they are such minor characters. But it is very, very cool when you see them. As I was mentioning earlier for Frostgorge Sound, there was a tomb, a massive area of Frostgorge Sound is a tomb to a specific dwarf, and that's not an important dwarf to the game. It was a random weaponsmith guy that you saw in Eye of the North, and he like had this huge section in Frostgorge Sound. And I knew the link, and I loved that. I really did, that they put this such an obscure dwarven character from Guild Wars 1, and they kind of introduced him. Oh, look, this guy actually had this big story. Look at all this stuff he had. Look at the legacy this random character left on the world, where we have other characters that didn't leave a legacy at all, that were huge in Guild Wars 1. I loved that, but obviously that's a reference that a lot of people aren't going to get. I specifically had to go to the Guild Wars 1 wiki when I saw his name, wiki it, to see whether actually this was a Guild Wars 1 character, and I was surprised when it was, and it was such a random character too. I love the little references, I really do, and I love how you can open up the Guild Wars 2 map and see that there is a core structure still maintained in the geography of the planet, while everything else looks so different. Yak's Bend in particular, if you just look at it at face value in Guild Wars 2 and you don't actually notice that the waypoint is called Yak's Bend, or you don't speak to any of the NPCs there, you might not recognise it's the same place, but as soon as you do see that it says Yak's Bend waypoint, or you speak to some of the Norn that are now there and they mention, oh, this is Yak's Bend, and you look at the actual geography in the area, you can see it's the same as the Guild Wars 1 area. It's just very difficult to recognise, because actually if you do go to that place in Guild Wars 1, you'll see a lot of it is very ragtag, small structures that really wouldn't have survived the passage of time. The only reason it was so busy in Guild Wars 1 was because of all the Ascalonian evacuees, but you go there in Guild Wars 2, you look and you're like, oh my god, yeah, this is where the campfire was, and it's really fun. And you can go north and see where that arena was as well. You can actually see the Shiver Peak arena there, and all of the core geography is still there, and that works on a small scale and on a very large scale too. You can then open your map from Yak's Bend and see, oh my god, yeah, look, there's the Greenwich Courthouse, and you can see the progress and how really everything does still line up, and that is just fantastic to me. And it makes it even more exciting with a lot of those areas of the map that we still can't go to. Like, for example, Anvil Rock is just off to the left of where Frostgorge Sound is. It's not accessible in Guild Wars 2, but that was a very exciting, very big area in Guild Wars 1, and I can only imagine how it would look with the scale that Guild Wars 2's gone to. So yeah, really fun. I love the little references. I think I say keep them coming, I really do. And when we get expansions to more areas of the game, like Cantha and Alona and stuff, I think ArenaNet would be really amiss to not put them in, just because not every single player in the game is going to appreciate them. I think that would be wrong. I really do. It doesn't take away from their experience. If anything, it just makes the world feel a bit more in depth and feel like it's got a lot more history there, which at the end of the day, it kind of does. So anyway, there you go, guys. That's Guild Wars 2 Daily for today. I did have a very long question that came from people about exploits and bans and stuff, which I do want to get into, but that's a bit of a dead horse at the moment, so we'll return to the dead horse tomorrow. But in any case, thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.